Welcome to Beyond Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis, and we are really excited for today's guest. This fall has been very heavy football coaches. We have a lot of football coaches on here, but it's football season, and being a former football coach myself, it's just that's what the fall's all about, man. Football is takes over the world at all three levels, and it's fun to kind of have coaches on here and talk about it. And I have another great guest on here today, a former coach at Ashland High School in Old Colony. Has about 20 years of coaching experience, somebody who has taken over the program at Whitman Hanson over the last couple of years. And you are seeing that development from year one to year two, physicality, the toughness of the program. It's making that turn. And a lot of that has to do with the guest that we have on here today. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen of Whitman Hanson football, Zach Bothelo.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is really cool. You and I have talked on social media a little bit, like in the spring and so on and so forth. So it's nice to be able to finally kind of get you on here and really hear about the great job that I think you're doing with Whitman Hanson for sure. I start this off with every coach because I think in football season it's just like been kind of funny. We've been hearing about just the shortages of helmets, and then coaches have told me belts and knee pads and thigh pads. I mean, are you seeing that in your program too? I'm just so curious, different parts of the state, what they're seeing a little bit.
Oh, 1,000,000%. I mean, we're very lucky. We have an awesome equipment guy. He found anything that he could, but I mean, we have begged, borrowed, and stolen helmets from anyone we could. And our freshman coach spent some time week two of the season spray painting helmets to make sure they matched our color scheme and trying to order things out weeks and weeks in advance to hope they get here. We had to play our week two away game in our home jerseys because our white jerseys were somewhere in China. And we didn't know till the day of our next away game that they had made it in time, and we could show up in whites and not reds. So yeah, it's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of moving pieces. We were very fortunate this year compared to some stories I've heard, but it's still been a major part of my job.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me because, you always have, like, no matter what, there's always some sort of equipment snafu with maybe like one or two kids, whether you don't have enough helmets that fit or shoulder pads that, there's missing clips and things like that. But every football coach that I've talked to, every football team we've covered across the state, when I talk to a head coach, this is a legit conversation that goes on for like 20 minutes. And I'm just like, wow, like my mind's blown that there was so many issues going on. And I'm sure these companies like Rydell and all these other places, they're probably feeling it and hearing it, not just at the high school level, but I'm sure this is going on college level and professional level. I mean, obviously high school is kind of the low man on the totem pole, but I am sure it's happening at all levels. So it's funny to hear. I've been starting off the podcast with a lot of the other question because every coach is telling me something different and something else that they're missing. And I'm like belts. Like belts is a huge one. Like
Belts
belts and
is
kids on
huge.
peanuts are falling down and
Yeah.
everything else. So, you don't think of these things, but it is, and for a head coach, it's a headache. It's an absolute headache and a whole different part of your job you're not expecting.
Oh, we had, and we try to be really good with our youth programs. They're so great with us. And one of the youth presidents reached out and he's like, "Hey, do you have 10 extra belts lying around? Like any color doesn't matter." And I was like, "You can have anything I have. I might have three belts, and you'll
Yeah.
have to cut them out of those pants that have them like pre-set in there, and you can have them, but it's not a surplus around here right
Yeah, so you talked about it, and I had this as kind of one of the things I wanted to chat with you. So we'll just kind of jump into this. But taking over a program in general, working with the youth, you mentioned that you work with the youth program. I mean, for you jumping on board, becoming head coach, how quickly were you jumping into contacting the youth program, letting them know who you are, putting a face to the name, and just kind of showing that, development of, hey, this is my farm system for all intents and purposes that I'm going to be paying attention to over the next few years.
now. That was one of the first things I did when I took over Whitman Hanson. It was definitely something our athletic director Bob Rogers was really important to him. He's the basketball coach in district, and that's something he does an outstanding job with, is engaging the youth programs and clinics and camps for the kids, and helping out with the travel teams and all that stuff. So, I mean, and Whitman Hanson is such a historical football community that it was not hard for me to get in touch with the youth boards, the presidents of both. We are lucky that we have two youth programs actually. We have Whitman Youth and Hanson Youth. So we have two feeder systems. And I mean, right away, just getting to meet the adults that were in charge. And then last fall, spending some time just being at the kids' games, having them see our guys there, making sure we have them come out to as many of our games as we can. But we had a big youth night last year. We just had a youth night this past week where the kids make a big tunnel for our guys to run out through. And then we're going to do it for them because the last game of every season, Whitman plays Hanson
Oh,
as the
okay.
finale of the youth season. So it's a cool thing because it's like for the eighth graders, it's the last time they'll ever be opponents because after that they'll be teammates moving forward. So our guys, we're a very close knit team, but on that day there's a very clear division of the Whitman versus the Hanson kids, and they split on the different sidelines. So that's been a huge part of what we're trying to do. And we ran a youth clinic this summer. We're going to do it again next summer and keep trying to create opportunities for our guys to work with the younger guys. Because I mean, as you know, when you're a kid growing up in a town, you look up to those kids like they're Tom Brady and Mac Jones. Like those kids are the kids. You want to be them. So our guys do a great job of giving back, and we're trying to help develop those programs as much as we can because it's only going to help us in the long run.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool when you say that, like, you guys go to their game because there's so many schools that do youth nights that have the youth there and the feeder programs there, but to kind of give back and go to that, and where you guys have that rare thing of the two towns playing each other, and yeah, having that divide a little bit. I mean, you remember that probably when you played in it, and then you remember that of now being a part of it on the other end and rooting on your side, and yeah, that sounds real cool. So, I like that you guys give back to that for sure. And yeah, we grew up in an area, man, for the last 20 years that being a high school football coach, you have the Bill Belichick, the greatest of all time, Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, and kids want to emulate them. Coaches want to be these guys. You philosophy wise, we use the same lingo a lot of the times as far as how you run your program and how you might, respond to questions and things like that. It's funny how much we've probably developed our programs and how we coach and so on just from having, them to look at and them to emulate for sure. Um, Now, year one was really cool. I found this newspaper clipping when you first got the job at Whitman Hanson, and it's I think the Enterprise. I'm not sure what town that
Mm-hmm.
is, but it said, and I find this interesting because when I first took over as a head football coach, I'm such a defensive minded guy. So being physical on defense and playing good defense and really, win or lose, I want to win or lose tight games, low scoring games early on because it's a mentality that you want to build in your program. And I think being physical on defense is really important in the long run for your program early on. And I saw this cool, there was a lot of nice things that people said about you, athletic directors, the principal, you being an educator yourself and understanding that it's more than just a game and working with these kids and developing into life. But from the football aspect, just how I think, I found this being really cool was you said we want to be one of the toughest teams in the South Shore. We want to play that smash mouth style of football and offense and defense. I don't mean that in the old school. We're going to be double tight wishbone every single play. But the mentality of what we want to be is physical. We want to run the ball effectively, and we want to really play strong defense. Now, saying that and implementing that into your program and culture can be two different things, right? Because one, you may inherit a program that's not that. And then two, you also have to be able to kind of create your identities, right? And it can be a struggle becoming that. And I know you guys, were 2-9 last year, and that's what I was my first year. And there's probably 2 or 3 games you look at being like, oh, we should have won these games. We could have won these games. So that
Yeah.
record looks a little bit different. But how do you implement that, because that's not easy to do, making teams maybe where it's such a finesse game now and spread, and but you face those tough physical teams that you don't want to face them like every down. They're tough. So how do you build that in your program? How do you build that into your culture for the long run?
I mean, really, the first step before we kind of went into a specific direction was getting to know the kids and the families and the history of where I was. Because I didn't grow up there. I knew a little bit about the legend of the the Coach Bancroft era Whitman Hanson teams and kind of what they were all about. And they were double tight, split back, under center, and they played ferocious defense. And talking to the kids and kind of their mentality, it's a blue collar town, and our kids are working all summer. They're tons of our guys go on into the union and the military and all those tougher sort of jobs, and that was something that really appealed to them. They wanted to hit. They wanted, like, we used to get in trouble in 7-on-7. We were playing too physical, which I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, here, guys, chill out. But like overall, I'm not super mad about that.
It's great, right? It's
Yeah, it's
great.
a good problem to have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So just kind of rolling with those guys wanted to be, and where I came from, coaching at Old Colony, where we had 30 kids, freshmen through seniors. So you didn't we weren't attracting these 6'4" basketball playing wide receivers. We had tough folk school kids that wanted to hit someone because it was what they wanted to do with their spare time, and we made it happen. And looking at the landscape of the Patriot League, where it's like you said, a lot of spread them out, four wide, really great athletes, great passing schemes, and all that stuff, which clearly is working for a lot of teams in our league. But we wanted to kind of take things in a different direction, and you see how difficult it is to prepare for those teams that do something a little bit different. And we thought that would give us an edge, and we found some success with it towards the end of last year, and kind of molded our image this year into that. And the kids have been in from the start, and I knew they were in when last year we put in a double tight double wing set, just running that off tackle slam up and down the field, and our wide receivers are in my ear saying, "Hey, stay in this, stay in this. This is working." You guys realize you're not going to touch the ball all night. Like, that's stay in it, stay in it. It's working. And that was when I was like, okay, these kids are ready for this kind of football. And they've taken it and run with it this year because they're a tough football team.
And I think that's so like when you see that in high school football, I think, going back to talking about that four wide spread type, you might see guys playing inside defensively that are a little bit smaller because they need to be a little bit quicker because teams are running those drags and those digs and those things across the middle. And it's sometimes that if you got a quarterback who can sling it, teams sling it. So now all of a sudden you bring the tight ends in, you have a fullback. Those undersized linebackers are now going against big physical guards and tackles and pulls and dives, and to take that on all game is not easy, and it's a mentality, as you said, we're going to go out there, we're going to wear you out. And then when the game's late, we're going to pound the rock down your throat. And it's tough to become that in high school because everyone's so spread happy and the spread offense is just at all levels and it's evolving and it's sexy in a lot of ways that you score points, you move the ball quick, versus pounding the rock, eating clock, wearing a team down, and then being that because let's be real, like your guards are probably your linebackers, right? Or your fullback is probably your linebackers in a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
senses and those tough style of offenses. So those kids are physical all game long and they can take on the run. They can run, you'll be able to run the ball down teams' throats. So, it really does equate to building that mentality for sure. And it showed in your record because, you started for year one is 2-9, and that's implementing something. When you're changing a culture and you're changing a program, or not so much changing, but adding your own mix into it and getting buy-in, sometimes it takes a while. And I'm sure you look at your back 5 games versus your front 5 games, and you're saying to yourself, yeah, we played a lot tougher, a lot better. Like our team got better. And here you guys are this year sitting at 3-2. And let's not downplay the teams that you played either. Like you played Hingham, who's currently 4-1. You play Rockland, who's currently 4-1. Hingham's loaded. I know they played Arlington, who we covered a few weeks back. And I thought Arlington's running back was phenomenal and they shut him down. So to see that you guys played, like, I think it was like a 13-7 game against them,
Yeah.
where the year before was 35-0 game. So that's showing how much tougher your program has gotten, and that mentality that you wanted is it's starting to happen, or it's already there. So talk about your squad this year a little bit and the year into jump into year two, because I'm sure as a coach you learned a lot too, from year one. We talked off air, but like some of your jobs and responsibilities, like you talked about the youth program, that's like one of like 30 things that you're doing that's not even coaching the product on the field.
I mean, this group that we have right now it's as great a senior class as you could ever hope for. We start 11 seniors on both sides of the ball.
Wow.
And we have some underclassmen that work in and spot here or there, and some nights get a bunch of reps and some nights don't. But in terms of the guys who start the game, it's a senior class. We got 20 kids in it, all really good football players, and they were excited from day one last year. Some of them took their licks, getting some early playing time. We had a bunch of injuries to start last year, so some guys got in maybe a little sooner than they would have in a typical season. But they never wavered. They never wanted to back down from it. And when the season ended, it was not a chore for me to convince guys to get in the weight room, to play other sports, trying to get guys to play lacrosse and run track and wrestle and all those things that help keep you in shape and translate to the football field. And our senior leadership has just been so truly outstanding, not just in like the give a speech stuff, but in like the one of our senior captains, we tell him he's an Uber driver because he's picking up 17 kids to get to practice on days we don't have school. And I didn't even know he was doing it until halfway through the season because he just does it because it needs to get done, so he does it. So those kids have bought in. They want to be successful. They want to have a great season. They want to leave a legacy for the next group that comes through behind them. And all those things working together. It's been such an enjoyable group to coach, and the results are showing up for them, which I'm just very happy that they're able to kind of get what they deserve.
So is that the like a lot of that same group from the year before? Did you have like a smaller senior class, or is that like a junior class? You had a pretty big senior class the year before that as well, or
No, we had a pretty small senior class
okay.
last year. It was 14 kids, and I mean, by the end of the year, 5 or 6 of them were pretty banged up. So definitely a smaller group, and I mean, you talk about a group that was resilient. They went from a regular sophomore year to a COVID junior year to a new coach for their senior year. So
Yeah.
heads were spinning, rolling around crazy. Uh, and I mean, they did a great job of kind of laying that foundation for us. And I'm glad they got to finish out with a couple of big wins last year. Those guys that we have this year saw what went well at the end and took it, added some more of their own to it. And I'm really proud of what they have done to shape who we are, because I tell them all the time, if I could go out there and make a play, I would, but I can't anymore. It's got to be you guys. And they take that seriously and they make it happen on Friday nights.
It's awesome. And what are your numbers? Like, what do you kind of carry as a bench? I mean, you guys are obviously taken from two different towns. What do your numbers look like?
Right now, varsity JV combined, we have 63. And then we have a massive freshman class right now. We have 37 kids playing
I mean,
freshman
you're like
football.
100 kids in the program, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. We're shooting for 120 next year. So we're trying to
What was
build.
year one? What was year one?
Year one, we were at 52, about 80, I would say.
So you've jumped about 20 and you're hoping to jump double that the fall. I mean, so that's great. I mean, no wonder why you were scrambling for equipment and helmets and everything else, because I'm
Right.
sure numbers wise you were like, wait, what? We have how many kids?
Yeah, I know. The freshman coaches are both science teachers in the building. There was a week I was like, hey, can you take 2 days off from recruiting? I gotta see if I can outfit these kids in equipment. Hold on.
Yeah, hey, that's a
A good
great
problem to
problem.
have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
good
great
problem
problem.
to have.
That's like we had Danny Kelly on here from the show Tech, and he was the same thing. I think he has just about 100 kids in his program, and he was facing the same things. Like we just had kids that kept showing up, and we're like, "What are we going to do? We don't have half the equipment we need for them." So it's a great problem to have. And you guys are Division 3, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So I look and I mean, I know the state uses the max prep rankings and everything else, but it says you guys is number 9 in Division 3 according to max preps. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's great to know that that's where you are and you played some powerful teams. And obviously the way that playoff system works, even though you lose those games, you're playing, those teams are winning. That's just your strength of schedule there to kind of
Hmm.
boost you guys up and hopefully get a home game. And, if you make the playoffs and things like that. So that's, or when you make the playoffs, I should say. So that's great to see as well. So, you definitely have turned it for this program and really got buy-in, and the future looks really bright. We're going to jump into our segment. It's called the 2-minute drill. I usually do this at the end, but we're going to call it our 2-minute offense into halftime here. It's rapid fire questions, 1 to 2 word answers. It's pretty laid back and fun. I'm not going to throw anything crazy at you. But if you want to explain something, you can. We're pretty lenient here, so it's totally fine. So I'll set the timer and it will fire them at you.
All right.
Most important defensive position you have.
Middle linebacker.
Okay. Fourth
Um,
and goal. I'll let you explain that. Do you want to explain that? You look like you.
no, that's all right.
Okay. Fourth and goal. Would you rather win the game on offense or win the game on defense?
If you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have said offense, but you asked me this year, I say defense.
Okay. I love it. Outside the quarterback in your offense, what's the most important position in your offense?
The fullback.
Fullback. Okay. Song that still gets you juiced up a little bit as a coach. If you heard it before a game, you'd be bobbing your head a little bit, like getting pumped up for it.
Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes.
Oh, wow. That's a great one. No one has said that yet, which is mind blowing till
Wow.
now. um, One word to describe your coaching style on the sideline.
Um, Try to say, I'd like to think calm, but
Okay.
some folks might disagree.
All right. So my follow up to that is, what would your players say if they had one word to describe your coaching style on the sideline?
uh, Enthusiastic.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a very good one. Um, how much time do you take off when football season ends before you're really starting to think about it again?
I try to take a month off. I mean, as you know, off is a very relative term. But I
Mhm.
try to take a month, and I try to have the kids take a month too to like rest, reset, be something else for a little bit, and then hit the ground running in the new year.
Sounds great. Last question. What do you think the Patriots' final record's going to be this year? Or how many wins do you think they'll have? I'll put it that way.
I'm a little bit of a pessimist with this team. I want to say 7.
7. Okay. Sounds good. Well, listen, you survived the 2-minute drill. So, that, like I said, that's usually our end segment here, but we'll call it our halftime segment. This has been a lot of fun so far. And as I said, you are our 74th episode that we have on here. So
Wow.
you just missed the big 7-5. But, as I said, I was really excited to get you on here. It's been a lot of fun so far. We're going to jump into the second half of what we're talking about and what we've been doing. So, we talked about this squad a little bit this year. You have obviously a very senior heavy group. I mean, are there any certain players that you kind of want to highlight a little bit? Anybody out there who's maybe having an exceptional season or having a season maybe above expectations a little bit that you want to give a little kudos to? Feel free to fire a few if you want to, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, our offensive and defensive lines have been outstanding this year. Both senior heavy groups, but our captain Max Colclaw, center and D tackle, has been a monster. Noah Hopkins, tackle and D tackle, and then we've got a slew of guys who a little undersized maybe, but just ferocious. Colin Murphy, Connor Sotak, Roman Zamretta, rounding out the offensive line, and all those same guys play defense too. And in the league that we play in. Um, there's a lot of schools, especially the D2 and D1 schools, that have linemen that only go one way.
Yeah.
So we're asking our guys to compete with people who are getting, 6, 7, 8 minutes off and sitting on a bench with a coach and all that stuff. And they're just go, go, go. And we spell them when we can. We have a couple seniors, Jacob Getchell and Eli Alcorn Crowder, that are giving them some reps here or there. But that group is our core. And they just battle. And frequently at the end come out on top, which is pretty cool. But they set the tone for us and make everything else work much more efficiently. When you have a good group in the trenches, it all opens
Yeah.
up.
It's crazy because when I took over as a head coach, the first coach that I hired, or the first coach that I really made sure was the most important coach I hired, was my offensive line coach, because your offense does nothing if your guys up front aren't physical, can't block, and don't understand scheme. So I know you're an O line guy just from doing my homework on you a little
Yep.
bit. Do you run your O line currently with your staff? Would you have an O line coach, D line coach? I mean, how does that work for you? I know some head coaches that are O line guys sometimes struggle giving up those guys to somebody else, or they're tough on that coach that's coaching that.
No, I was very similar mindset. I was very lucky to hire Randy Grimmett to be our line coach when I got hired. He's our defensive coordinator too. So he runs the O line. We brought in another line coach this year, Matt Adams, who played at Bridgewater State. So we have Randy's a more experienced guy, Matt's a younger guy. Both Matt's a zone guy, Randy's a gap guy. So they kind of
Right.
play off each other's strengths. And then I did keep working with the D line. Couldn't give up
Yeah.
line completely. So Randy and I did the D line together, and it's huge to have that taken care of, because I mean that's half your offense is linemen, and they
It
all are doing
is.
different things and different techniques, and you never know what a team's going to throw at you up front, and they got to know their rules inside and out. And I could draw up the craziest pass scheme in the world that I know will get open, but if there's a 250-pound defensive lineman in the QB's face, none of it matters.
No, it
Uh,
doesn't. And to be able to communicate, and that's, I think you mentioned it, like the experience versus having someone who's younger. It's two completely different voices, but in a very good way. Someone that might be younger that can relate to the kids a little bit more, but someone who's been there and done it, and them being able to communicate really well, obviously translates to having a pretty good O line and building depth. I mean, building depth on the line is obviously really important. I'm a defensive guy, and I would say more myself and more of a defensive back guy. And I would always try to make sure, even when I was a coordinator, that I was never super senior heavy. Like I would always have a couple of sophomores or juniors that I could start training at corner, whether that's cover two or playing some cover four or even cover three. Not much man unless I felt like they could cover, but you try to teach them that mentality and understanding their responsibility. So you're hoping when that group graduates, you can maybe move one of those kids, one stays a corner, one maybe becomes a safety. And that's how you kind of develop your depth. So I'm sure with the offensive line, it's the same exact thing. But having an old line coach, I tell any football coach this when they get a job, go get an O-line coach that knows what they're doing. Like, don't get
Hmm.
someone who's just going to tell you. Like, you want someone who's going to be able to show you, explain, and like, I interviewed our O-line coach harder than I interviewed any other coach because it all fall like in a way, it's even more important than the coordinator because the coordinator could have, like you said, all these different schemes and building and drawing it up, but if they can't language and talk to the kid and be able to explain it in a way that they understand it, doesn't matter how great the play could be because the quarterback or the running back's not going to have enough time to be able to kind of implement it or get it done. So,
Right. Football is still as fun as it is on the whiteboard. It's blocking and tackling. That is the game. And if you can effectively teach your kids to block and tackle, your team will probably be pretty good. And if you struggle in those areas, that's I mean, you could you could have the best guys, best scheme, but if they're arm tackling and blocking for a second and letting go, doesn't make a difference.
now let me ask you this, and obviously being that physical mentality, and I asked this question just because I've had a couple coaches on that aren't they don't hit in practice at all. Like I had on Tom Bingham of St. Bernard's, who doesn't practice hitting all week. Like they're in shells or they're in helmets, and everything's walked through and so on. Now your numbers are a little bit bigger. That maybe if a guy got hurt in practice, whatever, at least you might have it. He talked about not doing that because his numbers are very low and he can't afford to lose kids. As far as that goes for you, physicality and practice and concussions and everything that's out there now with injuries, like walk me through a little bit, I guess, how you're able to teach that physical mentality without just going a million miles an hour at practice all the time.
Yeah, so I really try to take what I do in the classroom as a teacher and kind of bring it out to the field. So everything we do is like we like walk through it, talk through it, half speed through it, and then hopefully by the time we go full, we have an idea. We do tackle fits every day as part of our warm up, and they're not from like a distance. They're like on a knee. We wrap and roll, fit up and drive. We do them every single day. One defensive indie period every week is a tackling period, and it's not full contact. It's not to the ground. It's getting your fit from D line. Like that looks way different than a safety getting a tackle fit. We do non-contact tackling stations every week with the rings and the bags and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we do have a couple periods designated each week where we go live full speed to the ground. And it's not doing it for 45 minutes straight. We're not smashing heads in old school, Okies or stuff like that. But we do make sure we get a little bang in every week and understand what that looks like, what that feels like, what the speed actually is.
Right, right.
And we make sure we do that in groups that are safe. We split off JV and varsity for that specific part of practice. So guys are some, 5'4" sophomores just coming into himself isn't taking on our senior fullback, pushing
Right,
220
right.
and bench presses two of them.
Yeah, yeah.
So we definitely try to find the right balance. Last year, I think I was a little too heavy on the physicality and it hurt us on the line. And this year, we tried to dial it back a little while still being able to practice. The kids, they enjoy that stuff too. So don't want to take it all the way out because I know they get fired up on Wednesdays when we go live. So
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's such a balancing act. It's from some ends you hear like, they're obviously over the years of changing the practice schedule and how long you can be out there and how much physicality you can actually have and being full and all that. And I totally get it. But from a coaching standpoint, that's also a huge change in what you're trying to do, specifically mentality being physical both on both sides of the ball, being able to coach that and implement that. So it's interesting to hear how coaches do that. And, it seems like the more chalkboard work, more, huddle work, clip work, and then go out there in the walkthrough. And then, like you said, Wednesday's your live day. So every program does it differently. So I always like to ask because it is a job within a job. You're obviously trying to keep your players safe too. So you got to be more prepared in what you're doing, and your coaches got to be more prepared. So when you get out there, you are utilizing that time the right way and being able to teach things where you might not be able to physically go through it at 100%. So no, that's really great. And one question I have for you, and obviously just because of our business and what we do, social media. What I found is when I was coaching, social media was just such a weapon for us, especially being a head coach and trying to recruit at a Catholic school of neighboring towns and cities and so on to be able to want to come play for this program. Instagram and Twitter were humongous for us in showing our workouts and our 7-on-7s and people seeing our players and the works that we were doing and so on and so forth. How much do you utilize social media in your program to show off, the great things that you're building and what you have going on in your program?
I definitely try to use it as a tool for good as much as we can. I'm my medium is Twitter. It's kind of where I'm most comfortable. I try
Yeah.
to share out things as much as I can there. And more so for, like you said, celebrating achievements and accolades and throwing some pictures up there because everyone likes that. And then recently this year, I've been using Facebook to kind of connect with our families and our boosters. That's more of like the medium where they're at, and using our boosters page not just to like solicit donations like we
Right,
frequently do to
right,
make stuff
right.
happen, but also share you know press clippings and photos of the kids. And um, I've been trying to be more open to getting help in those areas. 'Cause we have one of our kids' dads is a photographer. He's been on the sideline for
Perfect.
all our games and taking photos, and he uploads them right in there. All I have to do is make him an admin, and it's all set. And we have a student manager who wants to get into graphic design, so she's been running our
Perfect.
Instagram page and
Yeah.
making graphics and doing all kinds of stuff that I couldn't even pretend to do. But we have such a supportive community. Accepting the help has been, I think, big, and I think people are enjoying that because making playing sports or joining a club or whatever in your school a cool thing to do only benefits every kid in the school. So we're
Yeah.
trying to keep kids engaged in their school community, and I can help in the football realm, so I'm trying to make it happen.
Yeah, and that's kind of one big thing for us. I mean, when I started this podcast, we just turned 2 actually, literally yesterday at a party for it. But the first year has been a lot of just like coaches and having coaches on. And once the seasons opened back up and COVID, not that it's gone away, but COVID was under more control and people were able to come back and kids were able to play their real fall seasons during fall season. We covered a lot of high school football games. And what we found is that kids were like, I cover a game, and then that night I have like 10 kids DMing us on Instagram being like, I noticed you were recording during this catch, or you caught this touchdown, or I saw you in the back of the end zone. Do you have this clip? Do you have that? And we were kind of like, this is kind of a great tool. So, we hustled for like 3 months. We went to a high school game every week. We covered, behind the scenes. We reached out to the coaches, the ADs, and then we made a business of it. Came winter, hockey, basketball, gymnastics, and we were covering everything the spring and this football season. Every week we're somewhere. And what we've started doing is really having kids send us huddle clips of a catch, a tackle, a pancake, a big run, a sack, like whatever, and tagging them in it. And then all of a sudden, every high school kid is now sending their clips. And I was like, wow, this isn't out there. Like, no one's really doing this for these kids. And I mean, I'm like, just learning Instagram. Like I never had it my entire life. So I'm like still learning. And Twitter's kind of been more my realm too, especially as a coach. But it's amazing, like social media tools, how much it can really, I'm like, wow, like, and some coaches, since we've covered them, have gotten much bigger on social media because they realize the weapon that it kind of is for them as far as recruits, depending on where you're coaching and so on. I mean, you have city and town kids that are coming there no matter what, but for someone like me being at like an Arlington Catholic, like it was really trying to get that kid from Medford, getting that kid from Arlington, getting that kid from Burlington, getting that kid from Woburn, like what makes it attractive to want to come here. So social media has been a weapon for us, and I see, obviously I found you on Twitter and the stuff that you're doing, and I think it's great. But it is something that I think is evolving in high school sports in general. Max Preps, I mean, they post the best stuff. Like I follow everything Max Preps,
Mm.
and they always have cool clips that are cell phone clips on the sideline that are 10 seconds of a kid catching something or you catching something ridiculous like by accident, So it's a total weapon. So keep going with it. I had student interns too. Look into that, getting some high school kids that are willing to come on and like
Yep.
upload your huddle film. By the time you get back there, it was before. By the time we got back to practice, these girls uploaded it for us, and it was already playing like our 7-on-7 segment or our red zone
Mhm.
segment or whatever. And it was just like it was unbelievable, So keep going with that because that is an ultimate weapon if you can get them all involved.
It's
Um,
great with the community too when we do stuff like community service or we're working with the youth program and
yes,
the amount of people I see at school who have no interest in going to a football game, but see that our kids are out there lining fields for flag football, or we do like a big Thanksgiving dinner down at the VFW for senior citizens, and they see that stuff, and it creates a connection for the kids, like with teachers and with administrators. They're like, "Wow, oh, you were doing that this weekend? Like that's awesome! Like that's
yeah.
bigger than Friday nights. That's like a really awesome thing you're doing for our community that I care about." And I think it helps kind of put us in the space where we want to be as a program in the community.
Yeah, and I think your players being just not football players, right? Like show them that they're involved in the community, that they might be up on a Sunday morning at 9 o'clock volunteering for this thing when it's 45 degrees outside and they're wearing their jerseys out there and they're helping and they're doing whatever. Yeah, it shows character within your program, and obviously as you and your staff, it shows that this is something that's also important to you, and a parent who might be 50-50 on having their child play football because of the physicality of it also sees the character building aspect of it and goes, hey, you know what? Like, I want my son or daughter to be a part of something like this, and so on and so forth. So, no, it's cool. Social media can be such a weapon. Like, we've been lucky, like Arlington Catholic, Arlington High School, Neshoba Tech, Medford, Malden, Stoneham, Wakefield, North Reading, Austin Prep, like Kip, like they send us all sorts of stuff. And like you said, not just the football stuff, but even things that they're doing within their community or academic accolades that kids might have gotten, or the National Honor Society or Student of the Month or whatever. So we
Mhm.
always kind of show that stuff off because I think that's so important in building a program, is not just the product on the field, but teaching these kids about being good men, good young men off the field, because football equates to life. And there's just so many parallels of getting a job and working hard and earning it and everything else. And you kind of learn that playing high school football. You really do. And it sounds cliche, but it's the truth.
It is, and
Uh,
that's the one of the few things you can control as someone who is a coach or a player. Is you can't control how good the other teams are. You can't control your win-loss record. You can try your hardest, but can you take something away from it that's going to benefit you 5, 10, 25 years down the road? And if as a coach you can provide those opportunities and there's kids that take advantage and become a little bit better people because of it, that's a bigger win than you could find anywhere else in the season.
Yeah, and I know that that was a big part. Like when I did my homework on you, is like why the principal and the athletic director also said that you stood out amongst a lot of other candidates because of that community service aspect and some of the things that you were just literally talking about, being a teacher and understanding how important it is to be able to balance the two of them. So I know that you're legit doing that a lot, and that's something that needs to be said because I think there's a lot of coaches that are doing it, but not a lot of coaches that will brag about them doing that or talk about themselves doing that. So I think that's great what you're doing in your program, and obviously you're seeing it equate on the field as well as now off the field. And I'm going to bring this up. I mean, you could say what you want. I know as a coach, you it might be tough for you, but obviously this past weekend with Con Chase over Condell Spellman and resigning for parental issues. That's what's kind of being said. Obviously, it is becoming an issue in youth sports. I mean, every day I feel like you're seeing a clip out there of something that's going on the sideline, or parents fighting, or screaming and yelling, or whatever it is, and you're seeing games being played a lot more on Thursday nights because you're just not as many officials, and that's probably for a bunch of different reasons, but that reason is probably one of them. Just as a coach and hearing that an opinion, I mean, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. You can be as vague as you want, you can be as detailed as you want, but I'm just interested in the coaching community, what other coaches think about that when they hear something like that, and what their opinion might be.
Oh, yeah, I mean, just on a personal level, just I know Con a little bit from 7-on-7, and he's a Middleborough guy like me. And to know that his family had to go through that, and that he's going through that, and I can't even imagine being in a situation like that. And I truly, I know I talked to him this weekend a little bit. He seems like he's doing much better, and yeah, I really truly wish him the best and the kids over there the best. And that's a terrible situation for literally all parties involved. In terms of that whole situation and kind of the bigger picture of it, I mean, I'm super fortunate to coach in a community that has outstanding parental support and community support, and Um, you know, that is such a big piece of a successful athletic experience for student athletes. I mean, something I say frequently as a teacher. I'm a special ed teacher, so we have team meetings every year for the students I work with on caseload. And one of the big things I always start out with when I meet a new student or a new family is our end goal is the same. Like we both want the same thing: your student to achieve at the highest level possible, to have a great 4 years here, and to get that diploma and go on to whatever's next. And it's no different as a coach or a parent. We all want your kid to have the absolute best experience. And for some kids that looks like, you know, 70, you know, 75, 80 snaps a night and all-star accolades and touchdowns and all that stuff. And for some kids, it's spot duty here, there, special teams, and, an awesome time hanging out with their friends. And I think the more we can work together as coaches and parents and community members to create meaningful experiences for kids, everyone's going to be better off.
Yeah.
Because we can't all, I can't do it by myself. You can't do it by yourself. No parent can do it by themselves. The more positive role models in a kid's life, the better. And if we can all work together, I mean, it's only going to benefit the kids, which is the whole point of what we're doing.
No, very well said. I mean, very well said. And I think that, it is an unfortunate situation that happened over there. I think, unfortunately, we are seeing it happen a lot more. I mean, I know my coaching tenure, I certainly have seen it. And, I get it. Everybody wants what's best for their kid. But I think, at the end of the day, it's like anything else. I'm a teacher, you're a teacher. And I would never think about going into administration because I feel like that is such a difficult position to be in and dealing with situations. And you say one wrong thing or you handle a certain situation that people don't agree with, it's on social media, it's in the newspaper, it's on the news, and it's just not easy to deal with. So, I wish him the best of luck with his family, and I'm glad he made a decision that he felt was best for him. And it's unfortunate for those kids, but I think his mental health and his physical well-being are the most important things at the end of the day. And tip of the cap to him because I don't think there'd be a lot of coaches that would kind of have the guts to put out there, what that reason might have been. So, I'm glad that he did, and I think it's people will probably have further discussions. It's a huge topic on Twitter with coaches, and he has a lot of support there in that world. So, good for him, and I wish him the best for sure. And the last question that I love to ask all coaches on here, and obviously someone who's had a lot of coaching experience like yourself, and you put the work in, you put the grind in, you've worked under a lot of different coaches, and I'm sure you learned a lot of different things. What would be your advice to like a young you or a young coach that's jumping into coaching football, just getting into it, as they want to maybe become a head coach at some point? What would be your advice to them as far as maybe the road to take or just understanding the process a little bit?
It's funny. I actually had this exact conversation last night with a former student athlete of mine, Austin Mendes, who played for me at Old Colony, and now he's coaching at Baypath in Central Mass his first year with one of the guys I worked with in Ashland, Brian Richards. So he's in a coaching psychology class at Nichols, and he asked me that like exact question.
Yeah.
And I mean, what I told him and what he's heard from other coaches he looks up to is you have to be yourself. You have to be authentically you. You can't try to put on some character or do some act or try to emulate the guy you look up to, because if that's not really you, kids see right through it. But if you're authentic, whatever that is, if you're a yeller, screamer, high energy guy, but you love them after, great. If you're low key and kind of behind the scenes and do your coaching, afterwards through email and text because of huddle clips, great. As long as you're being you, uh, kids want someone who's going to be themselves, show them the way, and be real with them. And I mean, I'm very lucky to work on a staff right now with a bunch of different personalities and experiences and diverse backgrounds, and they all bring something different to the table, and kids benefit because it's just a bunch of good people being themselves, showing them one way they could figure it out. So be true to yourself, be you, be authentic. Because at the end of the day, kids just want someone who's real with them, and if you can bring them that, you can be successful.
No, I think that's like a great answer. Like that's like I've heard a lot of coaches say a lot of things, and being yourself is always kind of the one that climbs the most. And you're right. Like if you're trying to be something that you're not, it's hard to just pretend to be that. Like on top of the other zillion things you're doing, now you have to pretend to be somebody that you're not. And again, just being that sponge and really absorbing, as a young coach and listening to people's philosophies and what they're thinking and things like that. And not saying, "Oh, I'm going to copy this exactly," but I'm going to copy this that kind of fits my mold or fits the way that I would want to do something. So I totally agree with you, Coach. And I want to thank you for coming on here. This was a really fun episode with you. Our time is past here, man. And I know you had a late practice tonight. You were able to come home. I'm sure put the kids down, eat really quick, and I'm sure you get schoolwork and everything else and film and all that stuff, especially coming up. And who do you guys have this Friday night?
Marshfield this weekend.
Okay,
So
so you got a monster. Yeah, you guys have got a
yeah,
monster.
Patriot League gauntlet continues. It's
Y-
I mean, it's the best league in the state for that reason, but it definitely keeps me up late at night during the week.
Yeah, so I appreciate you even taking the time to pop on here and talk to us, and we wish you the best of luck Friday night. And we'll be following you. I'm really interested to see you guys. I know you're going to make that next step into the playoffs, so I'll definitely be keeping an eye on you and keeping in touch with your coach. So thanks for coming on here. I really appreciate it. And this is Anthony Petrella, Zach Bothelo, of Whitman Hanson. Till next time.
Thanks.